Greetings at Cheating Story Lab. I once held marriage vows in high regard, viewing them as unwavering promises, come what may, through good times and bad. However, I soon discovered these words are mere sounds people utter until adhering to them becomes troublesome. My name is Owen, and 3 years ago my wife abandoned me while I was undergoing chemotherapy. Not afterwards when things had settled down, but during the treatment, at a time when I needed her most. Recently, she returned unannounced to my home, hoping to restart our relationship, oblivious to the fact that I had remarried. Upon learning this, she crumpled on my front porch. This chronicles my tale. I met Vanessa when I was 29 at a friend's art gallery opening in downtown Portland. She possessed a natural beauty, her eyes as vibrant as the green dress she wore, finding amusement in the artist's words. We conversed for 3 hours that night, and 6 months later we were engaged, a year afterwards married, though in retrospect, we may have progressed too swiftly, but at the time it seemed perfect. For 7 years, my architectural consulting career seemed to fall into place, along with our beautiful home in Laurelhurst, providing a sense of stability. We traveled, built successful careers, and often discussed having children someday. My wife, a marketing director for a biotech firm, and I were admired by many as we complemented each other well, finishing each other's sentences and holding hands in public. However, my life took an unexpected turn when I was 36 years old and in the best shape of my life, training for a marathon. One morning while shaving, I felt a lump in my neck that didn't seem right. My wife dismissed my concerns, but 2 weeks later, 3 doctor visits confirmed my worst fears. Stage 3 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, an aggressive form of cancer treatable with chemotherapy and radiation. The day I told Vanessa, the rain was hammering against our living room windows, her reaction etched in my memory forever. For 6 months, I detailed the oncologist's CHOP protocol treatment plan with a predicted 60% 5-year survival rate. She paled, nodded, and affirmed we'd get through it. However, something changed in her eyes that night. The first round of chemotherapy wasn't terrible. Vanessa attended infusion appointments, offered comfort, and helped distract me from my sickness. I felt weak but functional, working reduced hours while she maintained her routine. Friends visited, cards were sent, and it seemed manageable. But the second round broke me. The toxicity accumulated like a freight train, causing extreme nausea, sleeplessness, and bone pain. My hair fell out in clumps, neuropathy in my hands made work impossible, and I was trapped in our bedroom, confined to a body that seemed to be attacking itself. During this time, Vanessa began staying late at work, returning home late at night, checking on me with a look of pity mixed with resentment. She'd never broken a promise by getting sick, but it felt like she was implying I had. My mother noticed first and asked where Vanessa was during all this. Initially, I made excuses, claiming work and stress kept her away, but my mother didn't believe me. One Saturday in May, she confronted me about Vanessa's absence. I discovered she'd been going on dates and weekend trips while I was fighting for my life through credit card statements left on the kitchen counter. Confronting her that night, she admitted to having an affair with a coworker since March, a month after my diagnosis. Feeling relieved, Vanessa declared she couldn't watch me die, packed 2 bags, and walked out. She texted me the next day saying she needed time to process everything. I was left alone, 4 months into a 6-month treatment protocol, with an empty bed every night while fighting for my life. My mother moved in, friends organized a meal train, my law firm colleagues set up a fund to help with medical bills, and the community's support during those last 2 months of treatment was incredible. However, I woke up each morning to find her gone and fell asleep each night knowing she had chosen an affair partner over our marriage vows. The divorce papers arrived while I was in the hospital for a neutropenic fever complication. Vanessa wanted an uncontested split, 50-50 on the house and assets, no alimony either way. Her lawyer's cover letter wished me well in my recovery. The following year was rebuilding, but every morning I was reminded of her betrayal as I woke up to an empty bed. By August, scans indicated complete remission. By October, I couldn't bear staying in the old house and bought a smaller Craftsman in Selwood. I sought therapy to cope with medical trauma and divorce, resuming part-time work in January, full-time by March. My hair grew back, though thinner, energy returned, and I started to believe I might have a future. 18 months post-treatment, I met Kelsey at a cancer survivor support group. She'd survived breast cancer at 32, 6 months ahead of me. We were both in the remission but anxious phase, learning to trust our bodies again. We became friends, sharing coffee after group meetings and walks along the waterfront, understanding each other like never before. We fell in love slowly, neither rushed, both aware of how quickly everything could vanish. Engaged last December, we married in April with a small ceremony attended only by immediate family at a venue overlooking the Columbia River Gorge, sans drama or pretense. Just two people who'd faced mortality and decided to build something authentic together. Kelsey moved into my Selwood house, and we adopted a dog, discussing travel plans for Iceland and Japan, places we'd always wanted to see. Life wasn't perfect, but good, healing, safe. Then Vanessa appeared. It was a Saturday morning in October, almost exactly 3 years since she left. Making breakfast in the kitchen, the doorbell rang, Kelsey away at her sister's baby shower. I opened the door to find her hair cut, weight lost, older-looking eyes. She held a Starbucks cup like a shield, greeting me with a hesitant, "Hi, Owen." For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating or experiencing some strange PTSD flashback. "What are you doing here? May I enter for a moment to discuss something?" Her surprise was unexpected. She assumed I would be more compliant. The old Owen would have been. "I've been contemplating us, and I admit I made a mistake. I was scared and overwhelmed, handling things poorly, which I recognize now. I've been in therapy, ended things with Trevor long ago. I need you to comprehend this, but you don't need to understand anything else." Her face conveyed a complex mix of confusion, frustration, and pain. "I drove 2 hours to see you, yet I didn't ask you to do that. Owen, what we had was genuine. 7 years of marriage doesn't simply dissolve due to a single mistake. One mistake she labeled as abandoning me during chemotherapy for an affair. That moment stirred something within me, not anger or hurt, but nothing. She seemed like a stranger on my porch, discussing people who no longer existed. Vanessa, I'm remarried now. My wife is Kelsey. We got married in April. The color drained from her face upon hearing this. It's impossible. We've only been divorced for 3 years, 2 years and 8 months. But you were ill. You couldn't have known. I survived, went into remission, rebuilt my life, found someone who stayed with me when times got tough." She hesitated, realizing how her words might sound. I didn't notice the coffee spilling onto her hand as the cup slipped. She was lost in thought. "This isn't fair," she argued. "I came here to apologize and try to mend things. I don't want them fixed. You don't believe me, but I do mean that. When you saw something change in my expression, the mask of apology fractured. So, you intend to discard everything we had, 7 years of marriage. You abandoned it 3 years ago. When? You departed me while I was sick, heading off with Trevor instead, leaving me in distress. She wasn't like that. She didn't abandon. Instead, tears flowed genuinely, not manipulatively. Yet you were wrong, and forgiveness is what marriage is about, right? But we aren't married anymore, and you made certain of it. I thought you'd wait, but there was an air of entitlement, the belief that I'd stay, continue being broken, grateful for her return when she wanted. She accused me of being unreasonable when I told her to leave. Kelsey, a stranger to you, was her response. Did you meet her during our marriage? Or is this revenge? The audacity of the question struck me hard, like a physical blow. Get off my property. She had no rights here. We're divorced. It's over now. Leave before I call the police. That's when she fainted, swaying and going pale, grabbing for the porch railing but missing, her knees buckling, and she fell hard onto the concrete. I stood there, then instinct took over. Years of witnessing people collapse in chemo infusion centers guided my actions. I knelt beside her, calling out to see if she could hear me. Her eyes were open but unfocused. She was breathing rapidly and shallowly, likely experiencing an emotional collapse. I called 911, told them someone had fainted on my porch, then got a glass of water and a wet cloth, waiting for her to come around. She regained consciousness after about 30 seconds, disoriented and groggy. "What happened?" she asked. "You passed out," I tried to explain, "but paramedics are coming. Stay still." She cried again, quietly this time, more sadness than anger. "Do you not love me anymore?" she asked. "No, I don't," I replied, but it wasn't out of hate. It was because I found someone better, someone who chose to stay with me through the worst times. I told her the truth. I loved her completely, but she left when I needed her most, and that changed everything. She refused transport, insisting she was fine, just dehydrated and stressed. The paramedics checked her vitals, made her sign a waiver, and left. She sat on my porch steps looking small and lost. "I should go," she finally said. Yes, she stood slowly, testing her balance, gathering her things, and walked to her car. A newer Lexus SUV, I noticed, probably filled with Trevor's money. She stopped at the driver's door and turned back. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "No, I don't hate you. I barely think about you. That hurt her more than anger would have." She got in her car and drove away. Kelsey arrived an hour later from a baby shower, carrying leftover cake and stories about her nephew. She stopped when she saw the shattered coffee cup on the porch. "What happened?" I told her everything. She listened, her hand finding mine tightly. "Are you okay?" she asked when I finished. Yes, I really am, I replied. Do you think she'll come back? No, she got what she came for, closure, but not the kind she wanted. Kelsey hugged me then, and I felt something I never felt with Vanessa, even in the good years, safety, real safety. The knowledge that this person had seen me at my worst, scars, fear, middle-of-the-night panic attacks about recurrence, and chosen to stay. I love you, she said into my shoulder. I love you too, I replied. That night I blocked Vanessa's number, not out of anger, just housekeeping, closing a door that should have been closed 3 years ago. Life moved on. Kelsey and I did too. We took the Iceland trip in November, I made senior partner at my firm in January, and we started trying for a baby. Some days I think about how different my life might have been if Vanessa had stayed, if she'd held my hand through those brutal final months of chemo, if we'd rebuilt together instead of apart. But those thoughts came less and less often because I learned. You can't build a life with someone who only loves you when you're healthy, successful, and convenient. Marriage isn't about the good times, it's about the 4 a.m. moments. In times of collapse, one must decide whether to stay or flee. Vanessa chose to flee while Kelsey stayed. Before our encounter, Kelsey was battling her own solitary war. We crossed paths in the wake of the disaster, two individuals who comprehended that survival transcends mere existence. It involves daily choices to be present, to be thankful, and to love those who reciprocate your affection. 3 years ago, I lay in a hospital bed, signing divorce papers while fighting for my life. Today, I sit on my back porch, watching my wife plant tomatoes in our garden, our dog asleep at my feet, basking in the sun's warmth on my face. Vanessa believed she could return when she was ready, but she failed to grasp that some doors can never reopen, and some betrayals can never be forgiven, not because of malice, but because the one who was hurt no longer exists. That man ceased to exist during chemotherapy, not from cancer, but from abandonment. I didn't survive in spite of her actions, but in a way because of them. I discovered who I was when everything was taken away, and I learned what I deserved. When I found someone who could give me that, I had the wisdom to recognize it. The last I heard, Vanessa moved to Seattle, got a new job. I don't know if she's with Trevor anymore. I don't care. That chapter of my life is closed, not with anger or bitterness, but with indifference, because the truth about surviving something like cancer is seldom spoken. The disease isn't the hardest part. It's learning who stands by you when you're at your weakest. Some people surprise you, some disappoint you, and sometimes the one who promised to love you in sickness and in health teaches you the most valuable lesson of all, that you're strong enough to survive without them. 5 years cancer-free now, happily married, building a future I never thought possible. When I reflect on that Saturday morning when Vanessa stood on my porch, I don't feel triumphant or victorious, I just feel grateful. Grateful she left. Grateful I survived. Grateful I found Kelsey. Grateful I learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you paves the way for the best thing. My name is Owen. My wife abandoned me during chemotherapy. 3 years later, she tried to return, but I had already moved on. When she collapsed on my porch, realizing what she'd lost, I finally understood. I hadn't lost anything she had. This is my story of survival and redemption. Thank you for listening.